All right, with that, let's move on to our next item. Ordinarily, we take a break, but I encourage folks, if you need to have a break, we'll just take one and come back quickly. We're about an hour behind, and so we need to make up some ground here. The next discussion topic is the discussion of the vaccination mandate. And Executive Director Nevitt, is the Supreme Court's order in the late materials do we have that available?
It's not in late materials. However, I did email it to the board last week. I can resend that email if that would be helpful to people.
If anyone needs that, just let the Executive Director Nevitt know and she can forward it to you. And it is part of the email that we sent last night as a proposed policy. So can refer to that if you need to. This, as you know, is a Supreme Court order from last week that requires all Supreme Court employees to vaccinate as a condition of employment, with some exceptions. And the Supreme Court strongly urges the Washington State Bar Association in the order to adopt similar measures. Immediate past President Majumdar and I put together a policy that was forwarded last night. Hopefully all of you have had a chance to take a look at that. That addresses the volunteer half of this issue, and all of us and all of the volunteers for the organization. Again, it's encouraging vaccination and requiring vaccination for in-person involvement in volunteer activities. Given the state of the Delta variant and where we are on numbers, I agree with the Supreme Court and the governor of Washington that this is imperative to proceed forward with. The aspect for the workers or the employees of the WSBA is left to the determination of the Executive Director Nevitt, who's working on that presently. So with that, that's the short summary. I see 4 hands up, 5 hands up. I'll start a list. Governor Williams-Ruth, followed by Governor Stevens, followed by Governor Knight, followed by Governor Higginson, followed by Governor Grabicki.
Thank you, Mr. President. And because the fact that I am just crazy for parliamentary procedure, I'm going to kick this off by moving that we adopt the proposed policy drafted by you and past President Majumdar regarding the vaccination policy for WSBA volunteers.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Governor Williams-Ruth. I have a motion, and I heard Governor Grabicki second. We have a motion. If I can speak to that,
I'll just.
Governor Williams-Ruth.
So I will say that thank you, President Cicchetti, for advising us of the passage of the court's order, because I did have an opportunity just through one of my liaisonships to bring this issue to the forefront and talk with my liaison, and it was the World Peace Through Law section. And they were all 100%, the entire executive committee was supportive of it. They've read the terms. We actually took time. I sent them the link to the Supreme Court's order, and we went through. They saw all of the exemptions. They saw the accommodations that are to be made in terms of remote and et cetera, and believe that it is a wholly reasonable policy. And they asked that we focus this as being a public health and not a partisan or political. And that is why they all were unanimously in support. And I agree. And that's why I made this motion. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Governor Williams-Ruth. Governor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. President. And so I'm seeing some communication in the chat, but I was also wondering, because I read what you have drafted, and I think it's a great job, Mr. President, Mr. Immediate Past President. And it included the Supreme Court order. And so as I read the policy is in lockstep with the Supreme Court's order, and I think that's most appropriate. I would ask Executive Director Nevitt if we can put the memo that a number of us received in the chat, so it could also be accessed that way. And I don't know if we can or can't, but I'm just asking if that can be done. So anyway, I would, so I support this, and I would also hope, Executive Director, that just as this policy for our volunteers basically is in lockstep with the policy that was promulgated by the Supreme Court, that we do the very same thing in terms of your authority to the staff.
Thank you, Governor Stevens. Executive Director Nevitt, can we put a link in the chat? Is that possible? No.
You can only do that if it lives online somewhere. I can share my screen, and I've emailed it to Nancy Hawkins, and if anyone else would like it emailed to them, they can email me.
I think that's a better approach. Let's not share screens, so we're blocking people out. Governor Knight.
I'll withdraw my comment for right now.
Thank you. Governor Higginson.
I'm not at all in favor of this. I would like to start by saying that I do not wish to get into the emotional pros and cons of vaccination. People have strongly held beliefs on both sides of that discussion, and that is not part of where I'm coming from. I am troubled by the fact that, one, we will prohibit elected governors from participating in person in meetings, which may limit their effectiveness depending on how that participation occurs otherwise. That is not part of what I believe we can do as a board to limit elected representatives' participation in the debate. There are certainly other consequences, such as potential legal ramifications. I recognize what the court said, but I don't agree with the court. So any court that are listening, I'm sorry, I don't think you're right. I think that this is a personal decision, and I don't know yet where the law is headed on all of this. I can't predict that. I don't have a crystal ball, but I am not sure that in the end, constitutionally, this public health situation overrides people's individual rights to make personal decisions about health care, and putting them in a position of not volunteering in whatever the capacity is, or forcing them into a vaccination so that they can continue to contribute, whether it's me or you or somebody on the Limited Practice Office Board or Client Protection Fund. You could name them all, doesn't really matter. I don't think that that's right. Our organization lives on the backs of volunteers. Many attorneys contribute to making this a good organization and keeping the things going that we administer on a daily basis with regard to councils and committees and so forth. And to tell them, you must either do what we tell you, which is vaccinate, or you may not participate in person, especially when we've talked more than once about the fact that we want in-person meetings, that it's more effective if you have in-person communications, be able to see each other across the table. I think that is a terrible, terrible precedent. I don't think that we should do this. And I'll be voting no on this motion. And I also think that it's a little premature. It's just giving it to us last night after 10 p.m. and then expecting us to digest it and think about it and vote on it today seems very, it seems that it does not give us enough time to really consider the consequences, and there certainly could be unintended consequences. So again, I want to, as I close, I want to say this is not a debate in favor of or against the vaccine. I believe that's a personal decision. I don't want there to be emotion in this. This is simply a matter of, is this a bad precedent? I think it is. I think it hurts the volunteers, and I think it prohibits governors from serving as effectively should they be a person who chooses not to have the vaccine. They're basically not allowed. They're blacklisted. They're not allowed to come to the meetings anymore in person. That is not what our members would expect. I personally would like to see this sent out to the membership, because the members certainly are the people who are the volunteers by and large. And I'd like to hear what they have to say. Those are my comments right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Higginson. And I'm sympathetic to your position. However, I do believe this is a life and death thing, and this is why the governor acted quickly, the Supreme Court acted quickly. I think we should act quickly as well. Governor,
which is why I said we should not make this emotional. And Mr. President, I'm just going to ask you, under Robert's rules, you were not supposed to participate in debate from the chair. If you want to do that, put a temporary chair and step aside. And then you can.
Governor Grabicki.
Mr. President, this is a point of order. I'm asking you to please respect Robert's Rules of Order. And if you have something to say, don't debate with me or anyone else from the chair. Step aside and put a temporary chair.
Governor Grabicki.
Say whatever you like, Mr.
Governor
President.
Higginson.
I'd like a
Governor
ruling
Higginson.
on my point of order, please.
There's no point of order on instructing me to do something in conjunction with whatever request you're making. So Governor Grabicki.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I would like a ruling on my point.
Governor Higginson, cease.
Mr. President, if I may.
Parliamentarian Stevens.
Okay, so Governor Higginson has made her point. This was after you spoke. If you choose to speak again on the merits, she is correct, and you should just ask the president-elect to chair while you do that. But now that is passed, and I understand you're now moving on to another speaker. We will take that into consideration. I will watch it as well, so that if you do that again, I will probably step in to tell you if you're going to engage in the debate, you need to turn the chair over to President-elect Tolleson. But I think we've now passed that. We've heard Governor Higginson's comment. I'm going to ask you to adhere to that going forward. And you have now recognized another speaker.
Thank you, Parliamentarian Stevens. Governor Grabicki.
Thank you, Mr. President. The issue of COVID and the issue of vaccines and the facts about the Delta variant have been before all of us, all of the public, for an extremely long time. We are all intimately familiar with the issues involved. This is a public health issue. This is not an issue of personal freedom. If somebody doesn't want to be vaccinated, they can closet in their house. That's fine, but they have no right to go out and be around other people when they are unvaccinated and a threat to the health of others. This was established by the Supreme Court back in 1905, I believe, with respect to the smallpox vaccine. There's no freedom issue here whatsoever. Our responsibility is to our employees, to our fellow governors, to other volunteers, and to the public. And our responsibility is to do the right thing. We also have a very clear message from the Chief Justice. I think we should follow that message. I think that any position to the contrary is not in the public interest and is not in our best interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Grabicki. Governor Stevens.
Thank you. I don't know how I would have felt if we weren't where we are now. And where we are now is, if you remember when we were talking with the Idaho bar, we are moving into a hybrid situation. I, as a governor, as you know, have I don't know when last I attended in-person meetings, even if we have had them, but I've never felt out of touch or less than because I am communicating virtually. And that is, to me, the leveler. It allows people to participate. And I think we should make sure we're doing everything possible to allow people who, if they are not vaccinated, they can still participate, and they participate in a way that is far better than, if we all can recall, before we went to Zoom and virtual, far better than a voice or presence maybe in a phone. And so I think we moved to that. But I will also say this, and I've said this before: COVID don't care, does not care. And if we are to protect our employees and each other, then no, you don't have the right to show up, not be vaccinated, be asymptomatic, and possibly then deal with and compromise other people's health. And that's just the bottom line, because again, COVID don't care. We have to take every measure we can in this public emergency. And and like I said, I think we have an alternative that is viable. As I come to you from my home, and I think a number of us, including Governor Higginson, if I understand your background, comes to us from your office. And I don't think you are less involved or engaged now than you ever have been. So that's just my view until this dastardly pandemic is past.
Thank you, Governor Stevens. Governor Clark.
Thank you, Kyle. So on page 1, item 1, the question that I would have with that is, it seems kind of vague as far as when we're on the bog doing governor work, would this policy prohibit people from going say for bar things from my local bar?
No, the local bars are not part of the WSBA, so it
But when I attend, with us, you know what I mean, as my role here, you see what I'm saying? I think the thing as written is a little vague that way, and so you may want to make that. That part. With that, yeah.
Governor Clark, would you advocate that it also applies to those situations?
No, I'm just saying that it's like, it's vague that way. You see what I'm saying? Right now. So.
But I'm asking you whether you think it should be defined so that it includes those or excludes those visits.
Well, either way. My views on this has really changed, and I'll say I'm biased because I almost died from it. So I'm for it. So thank you.
Governor Clark, which section of the policy are you referring to? What language?
It's item 1.
The prohibitions policy.
Yes.
Prohibits any volunteer, including the Board of Governors, from engaging in person or on-site volunteer work for the WSBA if the volunteer has not been fully vaccinated against COVID-19.
Yeah. So with that, if they went to some non-WSBA function, but they're still, as a role here, makes sense for what I mean?
Yes, I see what you mean. It's volunteer work for the WSBA as a liaison to the WSBA. So I agree with you. That probably could be clarified. Thank you, Governor Clark. All right, I've got 5 hands. Governor Higginson.
I would ask, that the policy be clarified to only apply to WSBA activities, Board of Governors, and so forth. I think if I were to attend as a liaison in a particular, a private organization, for example, I'm the liaison to the Middle Eastern Legal Association of Washington. I think their board's meeting virtually, but if they were to attend in person and hypothetically I was not vaccinated, I would not think it would be fair to tell me, no, you can't attend. I certainly don't think that a governor should be prohibited from interacting as they wish with their local bar associations. Those are where our members often are found. And so I had taken this policy to be referring only to board meetings or subcommittee meetings or so forth. If you intended it to be broader than that, or I would like to be clear that it does not apply to local bar associations or so forth. But I also had a question, really more of a comment.
Hold on, Governor Higginson. I appreciate you responding to that. Let me get to the people who haven't spoken yet, and then we'll come back to you. And I've got on my list Executive Director Nevitt, followed by Governor Williams-Ruth, followed by Governor Boyd, and then we'll come back to other folks who have already spoken. And Governor Sayani. So Executive Director Nevitt.
briefly, I was going to make another suggestion in response to Treasurer Clark's point. And we ran into this early on because a lot of our events, when we were putting other restrictions on employees around going to in-person events, and many of our events are not at the WSBA office. As you know, we have conferences and meetings and whatnot. So another possibility would be to just strike on site and just say from engaging in in-person volunteer work for the WSBA.
Thank you, Executive Director Nevitt. Governor Williams-Ruth.
So I agree that there can be a little ambiguity there. And I was thinking that the intent would be for WSBA volunteers at WSBA organized events. So like, for example, the World Peace Through Law executive session, the Personnel Committee, the BOG Committee. If I go and speak to the South King County Bar Association as a governor, this would not apply to that. That this was really only things that were being originated by WSBA and WSBA controlled entities, or I should not say controlled, but WSBA umbrella entities. Is that not the intent?
I think the intent is to save lives. So as far as net,
Mr. President,
there was a question to the drafting of it. If I can express that if so requested, but I think it was a wide net. We're trying to save lives here.
So would your intent, so is my understanding that it would not apply when I go to an outside entity, but it only would apply if it were like let's say I was hosting the King County Bar Association at my backyard. It would apply then because it's a WSBA sponsored funded event, but me going to them, if it was an in-person at, Bob's golf course luncheon, that would not apply. So the fact that there are people part of that organization that are not vaccinated would not prohibit me from going to that event.
Well, it's a good question brought up by Governor Clark.
Yeah.
And if you're appearing on behalf of the WSBA in your WSBA capacity, it could be read to say that that's included.
Well, no, I guess that's why what was your intent as the drafter?
And again, as broad a net as possible, so it would include that.
Okay.
Governor Boyd.
Mr. President, before Governor Boyd, it's a parliamentary note.
Governor, Parliamentarian Stevens, let's hold off right now and just proceed forward. We're so far behind and we don't have a point of order. So let's proceed forward. Governor Boyd.
Mr. President, we do have a pending point of order. And since you were one of the drafters, you probably should step aside from chairing this discussion so that you can participate fully in what you and Rajiv intended. That would be the better practice under Robert's rules.
Governor Boyd.
Thank you. I wasn't going to speak because I do think that we're behind, and I'm a little surprised that we're even having a debate about this at all, since people are dying and we're talking about not only the public health of the people in this room and the people on the Zoom call, but the people in the entire world. To Governor Clark's point, I think it's a very good point. I think that we should be mandating vaccines if we're going to attend any in-person or on-site event as a volunteer. And perhaps we add a phrase or as a representative for the WSBA. I don't know if that would clarify the language further. I think that if we are attending events at all in our capacity as related to WSBA volunteers, no matter if that event is in our backyard or on the golf course or on the side of the highway, I think that we should be vaccinated. I don't want to belabor the point. PJ pretty much stole the words right out of my mouth. I don't think that this is unprecedented. We mandate that school children get vaccinated. I don't think we're creating a precedent here. I think we're following precedent to save lives. I also have heard over and over and over again since I've been on the bar this year that the board's job is to lead. I think this is a really great way for us to lead and lead the state and lead the other lawyers in our organization towards protecting the public health. One of the things that I really like about this resolution is not only that we're asking all our volunteers to be vaccinated if they attend in public, but we're asking ourselves to be vaccinated if we attend in public. And I think that's a really important thing for us to do. And frankly, I think it's our obligation as leaders to pass this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Boyd. Governor Sayani.
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything that Governor Boyd just said. I want to point out two things. I mean, if we are expecting the staff, this goes back to the conversation we just had on the personnel committee and the climate and culture talk we had about accountability for the Board of Governors to represent our ideals and what we think is, you know, the way we should be leading. And this is another example of that. I don't think this is a hard one. And in addition to that, I think that we need to consider the fact that if this is a question about your ability to participate as effectively as you think you should be able to, you know, because you want to be in person versus public health, I think public health wins this debate. So, you know, yes, maybe you might feel like you could better participate in person, but is your choice to not get vaccinated. And I think the more important value here is that we are considering public health and safety of our members.
Thank you, Governor Sayani. Governor Stevens.
So the only concern I have right now is I know that Executive Director Terra Nevitt proposed some changes. And as I was listening to that, one, I'm not sure, but somebody should have moved those changes. But that gets me to another point. And this is very difficult. And that other point is that while I understand the urgency, I'm not sure that we should be trying in any case to further draft or revise as a group of 18 or whatever we have. But if we're going to do that, if there's a suggestion by the executive director, somebody needs to move that as an amendment. I am looking to my other governors because I'm torn on wanting to do this now, but wanting to take the time to do it right so we don't have to keep revising.
Any comments to Governor Stevens' comments?
I move to table this until the September meeting.
I don't hear a second. Governor Knight.
Thank you, President Cicchetti. The Supreme Court's order strongly encourages the Washington State Bar Association to adopt a similar policy. And I hear your comments, President Cicchetti, that you want this to be as broad as possible. My understanding of a directive to the Washington State Bar Association with respect to a policy is a directive to the Board of Governors, not a directive to an employee of the organization. The proposed policy does not use the terms or have the same scope as the Supreme Court's order. The Supreme Court's order defines the term worker to include both volunteers and employees. The policy in front of us today excludes employees. In other words, this board's action could result in requiring volunteers to be vaccinated, but not requiring employees to be vaccinated. That presents a little bit of a problematic situation in that we could potentially have unvaccinated employees intermingling with volunteers. I think there's a procedural question about, scope of authority with respect to policy and who makes that policy. And I just want to make sure that we focus on good governance with respect to the imposition of any policy or restriction. We are a self-regulated profession. We enjoy that privilege in a large part because we follow a set of procedures. We have not abused that power. We make these hard decisions in public. We allow the public to come and comment on these topics. We don't have an executive director make these decisions in private. I don't think that a vaccine related to a once in a century world changing virus really is day-to-day operational. I think it's policy. I don't think this is day-to-day operational. I think it's this board's responsibility to act with respect to employees as well. It's not a comfortable conversation to have, but I think it's our duty and our obligation. And I think if we're going to impose this restriction on volunteers, we should also impose this restriction on employees. And I think for good governance, in this particular situation, we probably, our executive director is probably going to take a similar position that this board is going to take, but that's not how our organization is set up. We are responsible for these policy decisions. We should face the blowback of our decision, not our unelected executive director. So I encourage this, I encourage a policy that is as broad as possible. And I think that the attempts to sort of carve out employees is unwise, as it may lead to a situation where volunteers are treated fundamentally different than employees.
Thank you, Governor Knight. Governor Grabicki, followed by Governor Higginson.
First, I am presuming that in drafting this policy, the drafters intended to leave the issue of employees to the executive director on the assumption that that is something that they should allow the executive director to do. Correct?
I recognize former President Majumdar.
Thank you. Governor Grabicki, President asked me to look at this and carve the language out after reading the Supreme Court order. I also have some background information. Both President Cicchetti and Executive Director Nevitt jointly and separately have been having conversations with Justice Gonzalez from before the time his order came out and after his time order came out. I believe the executive director is consulting with her executive leadership team. But since the order came out, we were going right into this BOG meeting and they were on the listening tour. So executive director wants to assemble her leadership team and figure out exactly what it is they're going to do. But I believe Executive Director Nevitt would best be able to answer that question. But it was in fact my intention to leave those operations to be done and trust in the executive leadership team and the executive director that they will be implementing something just as the Supreme Court asked.
Thank you. So I suppose that Terra could ask us to include employees today if she wants to, or she could say, no, I want to deal with the leadership team and do it my way. And that's really her call. If she said, add the employees now, we could do that and be done with this. But if she wants to go through the process with her team, I think we should allow her to do that. If for some reason the team says, no, we're not going to vaccinate anybody, I think it would come back to us at that point very quickly. But I think we should defer to the executive director's wishes with respect to her employees. Terra, do you wish to comment on that at all?
Executive Director Nevitt.
Yes. I want to echo what Governor Knight said, that this is difficult to talk about, these roles and responsibilities. And I wish we would have had more time today to actually talk about it, because I really think it is at the crux of everything. The executive leadership team did meet after I spoke to the Chief Justice and I was aware that this order was coming. And we did decide to move forward with a vaccination mandate for employees. However, we still have to figure out the details, what exactly the criteria will be, what exactly our policy or our procedure will be. And we wanted to be able to communicate that to staff with all of the information. I do, and I respectfully disagree that I do think that health and safety matters are appropriately within the purview of the executive director. I do agree that dealing with employees and volunteers separately is not ideal, because I think it could result in a different result. And, you know, personally, I think that it would be appropriate for the executive director to make the decision about both groups. And here's why. I think health and safety matters should sit with the executive, with the hired staff, the permanent staff, for a couple of reasons. One, I think there are timing issues. We happened to get this order a few days before the board meeting, but what if we had not? It is not always easy to bring together a quorum of the board to act. Frankly, sometimes it's impossible. I think these are the kind of matters that you want your professional staff to be responsible for. I also think they should be outside the purview of politics. What if the employees were 100% in favor of and felt that it was critical to their role that they have a safe working environment where everybody is vaccinated, but the board and the executive leadership disagreed about that? I think that this is a matter that, in my opinion, and ultimately it is the board's decision, so this is just my opinion, but in my opinion, I think that operational policies, health and safety policies, I think should rest with the executive director. And if the board doesn't think that the executive director is carrying out those responsibilities adequately, then they should hold the executive director accountable. Obviously, I will follow the direction of the board, and ultimately the board decides what those roles are. But that's my opinion.
Thank you, Terra. I want to make a motion to amend to try and wind this up. And I understand what Lauren is saying, but Terra, do you have things that you would like corrected in the language?
The only suggestion I had was to strike on site, so that it's just clear that it applies whenever a volunteer is engaging in in-person work, regardless of where it occurs.
Lauren, would that satisfy you, or do you think there's more improvements?
I agree with that. I also think we need to say, I don't remember what my language was, or as a representative of the WSBA. I just think that would clear it up if we were to go out to local bar associations.
All right, then I move to amend to incorporate Terra's suggestion and Lauren's suggestion into the language.
A second.
Governor Gerbicki makes a motion, seconded by Governor Sayani. And your cat.
Kyle, will you inquire whether that's a friendly amendment?
I forget who made the original motion.
Right,
It is.
And then do we need permission from the seconder of the original?
I think I'm the
motion?
seconder and I agree.
Okay. So we have a second motion. We have discussion on that motion, particularly on that motion. So please take your hands down unless it's on that motion. Okay, I see Governor Higginson and Governor Stevens.
May I speak then?
Go ahead, Governor Higginson.
All right. I think that this amendment is not well taken. I believe that if a governor is attending a function for a local bar association, that is, the local bar associations are, as someone already pointed out, not part of the WSBA. They are their own independent groups, and that should be up to them on whether they require people to be vaccinated who are appearing in front of them or with them. I don't think that that's appropriate. I think that, and that's not respectful of our local bar associations. So I'm speaking against that motion. These are the amendment. And I also will say, as part of speaking against that amendment, that we are acting from a point of not full information. Scanning the news, you will see many different approaches. There are several states have prohibited mandating vaccinations. There are alternative therapies that are being considered, offered in Florida, for example. The Center for Disease Control is very inconsistent in its guidance, and I could go on with examples. And we seem to, in this discussion, be assuming that this is the best practice. It may not be. We don't have full information. I don't believe, and I will finally say that that even the mandate from the governor about requiring county and state employees to be vaccinated gave them until October 18th. So I intend at the proper time to offer an amendment that this policy not go into effect until October 18th. So those are my comments.
I move the question.
All right, we have a motion to move the question. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second. If that's not, I understand, to be debatable. All right, I will do a roll call vote on motion to call the question. Governor Anjavel, Governor Higginson,
No.
Governor Boyd,
Aye.
Governor Clark,
No.
Governor Grabicki,
Aye.
Governor Pertzer, Governor Dresden,
Aye.
Governor Sayani,
Aye.
Governor Williams-Ruth,
Aye.
Governor Peterson, Governor McBride,
Aye.
Governor Abel, Governor Knight,
Aye.
Governor Stevens.
Aye, and I hope to be recognized after the vote.
I have 8 in favor, 2 against. Sorry, 2 against, no abstentions, motion carries. Governor Peterson, that was a motion to call the question. I'll recognize Governor Stevens.
Well, actually, I will wait because I think now you go directly into a vote.
Okay. Governor Grabicki, just for clarity, can you restate the motion?
Actually, I think that Brent should probably restate it. Well,
I
no,
can do it if you'd like.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Governor Grabicki. So what it is the motion to approve the proposed policy for WISBA volunteers with the change to paragraph, enumerated paragraph 1 under prohibitions, to remove the words on site and to include, I apologize, Governor Boyd, what was any representation as a WSBA representative, correct? Thank you.
Can I make one just technical, to remove the words or on site?
Yes, my apologies, or on site. So it should just read in-person volunteer work for the WSBA or as a WSBA representative, comma, if the volunteer has not been fully vaccinated against COVID-19, period.
All right, is it clear to everyone what the motion is? Yes, 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 okay. We'll proceed forward with a roll call vote. Governor Anjavel, Governor Higginson,
No.
Governor Boyd,
Aye.
Governor Clark,
Aye.
Governor Grabicki,
Aye.
Governor Pertzer, Governor Dresden,
Aye.
Governor Sayani,
Aye.
Governor Williams-Ruth,
Aye.
Governor Peterson,
Yes.
Governor McBride,
Aye.
Governor Abel, Governor Knight,
Aye.
Governor Stevens.
Aye.
I have 10 in favor, 1 opposition, no abstentions. Is that what you have, Executive Director Nevitt?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Glad we got that done.
Mr. President?
Yes, Governor Stevens.
Okay. So I supported this part measure. I am troubled and was actually persuaded by what Governor Knight said. So I would like to know from the executive director when we're going to have a policy similar. And I would hope it's not going to be, I hope it's going to be sooner rather than later, because we really have only half of the equation dealt with as it relates to the Supreme Court's.
It'll be next week.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with that, it is now 12:16 Mountain Time. And our next agenda item was the Budget and Audit Committee. Executive Director Nevitt, are we moving that to later this afternoon?
I mean, I think it's your decision. I know Anna Lanasa Selvage may not be able to join us if we do it this afternoon. So if we have time to do the safety project right now, we could, but I know you're already into your lunch, so we could also try to do it without her.
How does people feel about going over next door, grabbing something and bringing it back here. Is that all right? All right, why don't we take a 8-minute break? We'll run through the line and then we'll come back and we'll get started on this. Well, eight minutes, try for 8 minutes. If we're a little longer, we're a little longer. We're in recess.